Whoa, Honda is under construction. Happy New Year. So it's the new year and you've decided to get a new bike. You've decided to get a new motorcycle. You are either a first-time rider or you have an older motorcycle that you want to replace and upgrade to a newer model. Well, let's talk about that. How to buy a motorcycle.
In today's special MotoVlog episode, we visit some motorcycle dealers here in Metro Manila, and I discuss what I look for when buying a new bike. Which bike is right for you? Which bike is right for me? Which dealer is going to provide good service? Stay tuned.
What are the factors that you need to consider when buying a motorcycle? First thing that you need to check is, do you actually know how to ride a motorcycle? So even if you have the money, okay, you need to learn how to ride. If you don't know how to ride a motorcycle, is to get yourself to the motorcycle basics course, and you can do that either via a free program or by enrolling in any one, or at least the only one that I know, motorcycle riding safety course.
You don't need to have money to learn how to ride. Many of the motorcycle manufacturers offer free safety riding classes because they want you to buy their bikes. Among these are Yamaha, Suzuki, and Honda. However, if you have some cash and want to get serious, you can sign up for the Motorcycles Basics course at Honda Safety Driving Center for around 2,000 pesos. If you have more money, you can try the Ducati riding experience for 15,000 pesos. Because I'm cheap, I personally went to the free Suzuki training and to the Honda safety driving course. If you are a beginner rider or you are an experienced potato rider but wants to become a safe rider and change his or her ways, I highly recommend going to these classes. You'll learn a lot and be a better, safer rider for it.
Second factor, obviously, is, do you have the money? You need to understand your budget. Buying a motorcycle is not just a one-time thing. You need to consider the maintenance, because you need to be able to maintain the motorcycle regularly, take it to your dealer or service it. You need to be able to keep it running with preventive maintenance expenses. Change oil, brake pads, air filter. And also you need to consider insurance, because you never know what could happen. So you need to pay for insurance, you need to pay for registration. So you need to consider the total cost of ownership for all those expenses. Alright?
For a lot of us, a motorcycle is a big investment. Many of us will also rely on it every day to get to where we need to go, or even to make a living. Make sure you take care of your motorcycle so it takes care of you. Before buying a bike, be prepared for maintenance costs by looking at your motorcycle's maintenance schedule and get an idea of how much basic tasks cost, like changing the oil. Try to also ask the dealers and do research on which motorcycles are easy to maintain and have less problems. For example, Japanese motorcycles are generally much cheaper to maintain than European motorcycles. Try to talk with the mechanics in the shop to find out what are the usual issues of the model you like and which motorcycles are problem-free.
So choosing a motorcycle, I would suggest, highly recommend, to first check and be honest with yourself with what is your current skill level. of riding a motorcycle. Are you a beginner rider or are you an experienced rider? Some motorcycles, especially for beginner riders, are a little too much, especially for the engine displacement. So in the Philippines we call them big bikes or high displacement bikes. Now a lot of people are gonna say that it doesn't really matter, you can start in a high displacement bike, and for some people I guess that's true. And you know, you guys do whatever the heck you want to do, but I highly recommend that you first start with a manual shift motorcycle, something also that is low displacement, so that you get to used to riding a motorcycle in the city, okay, in lower speeds, and you'll enjoy it more that way. Okay, you'll get to look forward to buying your next bike. Try to take a look around these motorcycles and find what matches your riding ability. Don't kill yourself with a 1000cc Super Sport, okay?
Riding a motorcycle is a much more involved activity than driving a car. You therefore want a motorcycle that will work with you and not against you. Unfortunately, here in the Philippines, there are a lot of dangers like potholes, uneven roads, or irresponsible pedestrians, drivers, and other riders. Get a motorcycle that will not stress you out when riding, so you can concentrate on where you are going and not get stressed operating a bike that is too much for you.
The next thing you want to probably consider is your use case. What are you gonna use the motorcycle for? This is very important. You need to understand why you're buying a motorcycle. Are you buying a motorcycle for your daily commute? Are you buying it so that you can have a motorcycle to ride with your friends during the weekend? Are you buying it for business? Are you buying it for the racetrack? Are you buying it because you want to do an adventure tour, ride around the whole Philippines on your motorcycle? Are you buying it because you want to go off-road? So these are the different things. You need to recognize what you want to use your motorcycle for. What's your use case? Because that will also give you a short list of motorcycles that you can pick from. Some motorcycles do things better than others, depending on what they're designed for. You pick your motorcycle based on that use case. Now, one specific use case here in Metro Manila is that if you want to take a motorcycle ride on the expressway, the South Luzon Expressway and the North Luzon Expressway, you need a motorcycle that is 400cc up in terms of displacement. Don't ask me why, but that's just the rules, boys and girls.
For people who are wondering, the 400cc restriction on the expressway has a long and interesting history. The 400cc declaration can be traced back to a Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, Order 123. The tollways actually didn't want to let motorcycles in at all, and there were some court cases that I won't get into. Maybe one day I'll make a vlog about it. But for now, let's talk more about motorcycles.
Now that you got those practical things in place, it's time to take a look at other stuff or other factors based on your own preferences. Obviously, you want to buy a motorcycle that you like. So there's probably some specific motorcycles that you like the looks. because they look good. Obviously, you're not gonna buy a motorcycle that you think is ugly.
Motorcycles come in all shapes and sizes. Each one of us has our own opinion of beauty, and choosing a motorcycle is as much of a self-expression as it represents something about you. What may be a good-looking bike for you may not be a good-looking bike for your friend. At the end of the day, pick the bike that makes you happy. You are the one who's gonna ride it anyway, and not them. As riders, let's all get along, as all of us are united in something. We all share a love for two wheels.
Alright guys, one of the most important factors, in my opinion, when choosing a bike is choose a bike that fits you. Choose a bike that fits your body. What does that mean? A bike that fits you means that when you sit on it, you're comfortable. You feel that you have control over the bike. This is usually equated to being able to sit on the bike and flat foot the bike. Being able to flat foot the bike gives you a lot of confidence, especially in sticky situations or during situations in where you need to maneuver uneven roads, where there's a dip at the side of the road, where there's potholes that you need to walk over. And this is pretty prevalent here in Metro Manila. So you want to have a bike that you can be able to flat foot. But now you're gonna probably say, but what about the short riders? What's gonna happen to them? Well, I'm not saying that there's no more chance for short riders. In fact, there's a lot of short riders that actually ride very high seat super sports, okay? Now obviously there's a risk to that, okay? I'm saying it's not impossible, but just be aware that there's gonna be some compromises in terms of your comfort if you're not able to flat foot the bike.
It's not required that you are able to flat foot the bike that you want, but it certainly helps if you can. Try to go to the dealer and ask if you can sit on the bike that you are interested in. As you sit on the bike, try to see if both your feet reach the ground. Think of the roads here in the Philippines that you will be passing. Many of them are uneven or have steep inclines, especially if you need to take your motorcycle to some crazy parking lot in the mall. Try to imagine how owning the bike would be day to day as you are sitting on the bike, either tiptoed or both feet flat on the ground.
The second thing about choosing a bike that's meant for your body is the position. Now some bikes, especially the super sports, are gonna be leaned forward in a very aggressive riding position, because these super sports are actually based on race bikes. And obviously race bikes are designed to go as fast as they can around the racetrack. But most of the street bikes, or what we call the street fighters or the naked bikes, they're gonna be in a much more comfortable upright riding position versus the sport bikes. Also, if you take a look at adventure bikes as well as off-road or motocross bikes, they're gonna be a lot more higher, and the reason for this is they need to have a high clearance from the ground so they don't hit the rocks. Another type of bike for a different use case is what we call the cruiser or the touring bikes. Cruisers are basically much more relaxed bike type. So what's different about the cruiser is that the riding position is very, very relaxed. You got your hands higher up, and you got your foot high up on the pegs.
Like flat-footing the bike, ergonomics or your riding position will dictate how comfortable you'll be while riding. There's a great site called cycleergo.com where you can put your height and inseam measurements to see how your body would look like on certain bikes. You can even put options like arm bend or where you are sitting on the seat. However, nothing beats going to the dealer and sitting on the bike yourself.
So as you can see, there are many types of different bikes for many different purposes. Obviously, if you get a lower cc bike, there's also the scooters and what we call the underbones. So a lot of different types to choose from. So once you pick a bike that you like based on the use case that you want to use it for, the next thing that you probably want to check, oh my god, these humps. Okay, then what was I saying? The next thing that you want to check are the features of the bike. So bikes have many different features. Okay, you might be surprised that for example, the instrument cluster or the dash, okay, like this one, depending on the bike, you might have different information displayed. Some bikes actually don't have a fuel gauge. So people who don't have a fuel gauge in their bikes, what they usually do is that they have a trip meter. They remember the distance of how much they traveled based on the fuel that they've topped up with, and do some math. Frankly, myself, I don't want to do that. I don't want to bother with math. The other thing is that not all instrument clusters actually show the gear indicator. So some bikes actually have a gear indicator so that you know what gear you are in. Most bikes, like mine for example, I don't have a gear indicator, but it does tell me when I'm in neutral, which is pretty important. So yeah, you might be surprised that some features are not standard in all bikes. Finally, we get to other factors that are important from a safety perspective. Oh my god, how many stoplights are in here? Oh, cool. And those are the brakes. So most bikes these days, especially the modern ones, have disc brakes. Some of them actually have 2 disc brakes at the front, because the front brake is where you rely on more braking power than the rear brake, but obviously you need to use both in conjunction. And what I believe is probably something that you want to look for, especially if you're looking for a bike to take to the expressway or you're gonna get a high displacement bike, is the presence of ABS. ABS is anti-lock braking system. ABS is a technology that was first produced and was used for aircraft. ABS gives you more safety because it actually prevents your brakes from locking up from hard or emergency braking.
When you perform hard braking, the weight of the motorcycle transfers to the front wheel. This imbalance lifts the rear wheel up from the ground, making it lose traction, locking the rear wheel. Locking both wheels can also happen on very wet roads, as the water decreases the traction of your wheels from the ground. Locking your wheels at speed often result in uncontrollable skids that turn into accidents. ABS detects when the wheel locks and the electronics release and engage the brakes safely, allowing the rider to keep steering control and also brake safely the motorcycle.
There's also traction control. Traction control is when your bike actually monitors the rotation of your front and rear wheel many times in a millisecond. And what traction control does is that it senses if your wheels or any of your wheels actually lose traction. Traction is pretty important in a motorcycle because if we lose traction, we lose control of the bike. So you want some bikes that have traction control.
If ABS ensures that your motorcycle doesn't lose traction because of braking, motorcycle traction control, on the other hand, ensures that your motorcycle doesn't lose traction because of too much torque when accelerating. On wet surfaces, off-road gravel patches, or when there is sand on the road, putting too much throttle on a powerful bike may result in the rear wheel losing traction and spinning uncontrollably. Traction control systems detect this and regulates the maximum drive power of the engine to ensure traction is retained.
There's also a number of other features which I'll try to insert here.
Some motorcycles have much more advanced sensors that control ABS and traction control systems. Usually, ABS and traction control work using wheel speed sensors. However, more advanced motorcycles have IMUs, or inertial measurement units, which measure the motorcycle's angle, orientation, velocity, and position. Using the additional data, the ABS and traction control systems are able to make better decisions as to how to react to situations versus just wheel speed sensors. Another feature you might see that is becoming common is the slipper clutch. By its name, the slipper clutch allows the clutch to slip, making gear shifts much more forgiving to new riders and making it smoother. Some motorcycles have a quick shifter, which allows the rider to shift gears at a certain RPM without using the clutch. This is particularly useful at the racetrack because the rider is able to change gears quickly and concentrate more on their line versus needing to think of clutch control. A partner to the quick shifter is the auto blipper. During downshifts, it is important to maintain the same rev range of the engine, and the auto blipper does this automatically, again making it easier for the rider to concentrate on other things. Finally, one of the more advanced features is ride-by-wire. This means that the throttle control is controlled using sensors and computers versus mechanical cables. This allows for a much more smoother control over the motorcycle's power and even allows for different behaviors or riding modes based on certain parameters defined. Motorcycle suspension supported with electronics is also now available, allowing the rider to quickly change the suspension feel of a motorcycle via the rider modes versus traditional preload adjustment using bolt tightening. These are just some of the features that are available in today's motorcycles, improving the safety of the rider and making the riding experience much more enjoyable. The more premium the motorcycle, the more features you can expect. If you have the budget for this, try to look out for these features and see if it's something you want or need.
So yeah guys, as a final advice that I believe you all should do, make sure to get to a dealer or to get your bike to a dealer that you trust, because obviously your dealer is the one who's gonna take care of you, okay, if the bike breaks down and for maintenance. The other thing is try as much as possible to get a test ride, either from the dealer themselves, okay, if they offer that, or find a friend who will let you test ride his or her bike, or at least the same model that you want. So hope this advice is useful for you guys. Ride safe, everyone.